Hello, this is Voices from the Front Lines of CMMC Compliance, where we explore key steps in the CMMC journey, straight from the professionals guiding U.S. defense contractors through it every day. We spend time talking about how to prepare for the CMMC journey. We talked about the gap analysis. We took a deeper dive into the remediation work and process that needs to be done based on the findings of the gap analysis. Now that work is complete, it's time for the CMMC assessment. So you can consider this episode a bit of a masterclass, pre-assessment prep masterclass. Mock assessments, documentation review, training your team, surviving the assessment day. Today, hopefully, ideally, you'll walk away with some practical skills, a checklist to get you over the finish line with confidence. We're back with Laura Spencer from the advisory services team here at Systems Engineering. Hello, Laura. Welcome back.
Hello.
So let's talk assessment prep. A mock assessment is a pretty standard exercise, I imagine, to get prepared for the real deal. What does a mock assessment look like?
Well, prior to going through the full assessment, the real assessment, it is true that, yes, organizations will engage in a pre-assessment or a mock assessment. Just a good knowledge to have is that C3PAOs do have different terms for these exercises. So it's good to know, and I have found out too, carefully look through their proposals and ask about these options. There is always the rule we're conscious of is that the organization that is going to do your full assessment can't consult with you. So you do actually have the option to go through a pre-assessment or a mock assessment with some consulting in place. But you would need to do that with a different C3PAO. So those engagements are extremely helpful. Oftentimes a pre-assessment is required with your C3PAO to do your full assessment. It's sort of a vetting process. Understand if you're ready for full assessment. And my favorite is the mock assessment, which includes consulting, because I find that organizations benefit a lot prior to the full assessment to go through a mock assessment.
Sure.
Simulated, feel like it's really the day, and you need to speak, to all of the controls live, as if you would in the real thing. Show your evidence. You're going to have a C3PAO critiquing you, but you're going to get feedback as well about what went well and what didn't. And I find that that's highly beneficial to a lot of organizations to know, are we ready, and to get the feedback they want. Now, it is a significant cost to do a mock assessment. So you want to weigh the options carefully, think about what your needs are, and also what might happen if you didn't pass the full assessment. What would that mean for your organization? Those might help you choose which path you want to take prior to the full assessment. Right.
And again, not to get too far off the track, but do you have the option of, if you don't pass the first assessment, do you go back and do it again? Is there like a time frame? What does that look like?
I've heard varying responses from different C3PAOs. Obviously, there isn't a lot of availability. The nature of the findings might determine that. How poorly did you score? It could be some time before you're looking at reassessment, or it may not be much time at all, depending on what needs to be reassessed and what happened during the assessment that you did not pass.
Right.
We do know that there are items that can be put on a POAM temporarily, and you may pass the assessment and be able to action those within a time period. But outright failing, you can definitely have consequences and be a pain point for organizations.
So how can companies then prepare their teams to interact with assessors? I'm sure that can be nerve-wracking, not knowing what to expect at all, having not gone through it. How do you prepare your organization for that exercise?
Well, look, the easy answer is that you're working with a third party who has experience. It could come from your consultant. It could come from a C3PAO who's consulting you, not assessing you. It could be an MSP or MSSP that you're working with, or it could be internal personnel who are extremely knowledgeable internal IT teams and compliance teams that have a wide range of knowledge on this. So you have a range of resources available to you that can assist in the preparation there. Because it is true, I have seen organizations go through assessments with different outcomes, and they may, they may still cross the finish line. But as I said, it is a human thing, being in front of an assessor, it can make people nervous. It can be challenging for them to quickly come up with the evidence and the answers, even if they've practiced. So I do see a lot of C3PAOs encouraging, have your consultant in the room, have those subject matter experts, leverage third parties who can quickly get me the answer I need and explain things clearly, because that is what we want to see in an assessment. We want to, be efficient about assessing an organization and have the information that we need for each control. So, preparing for that, I think if it were me and my organization as an OSA, I would be looking for third-party assistance to get ready for that and make sure my people and my partnerships, my stakeholders, are also all ready to join me, because they will be joining me, my MSP or MSSP.
Mm-hmm. Talked a lot about documentation. That's sort of the common thread that runs through all of this from beginning to end. Are there commonly missed documentation steps or incomplete documentation steps that you might see?
There are, and we've all heard it. We all know documentation is such a big deal that we need to look after. When it, in reality, what comes to play, at this stage, I think organizations are working hard to make sure that they do what they say and say what they do. Mm-hmm. Policies match technical configurations. But there is a flow down of evidence. When I start to check for something, I may start with a policy, and then I might look at a demonstration, show me this technical configuration. And then I may know there's some supporting documentation that's key, like you follow a checklist, or you have some vendor documentation if you're outsourcing that to someone. Having that type of evidence is where I see a lot of organizations get tripped up. Mm-hmm. They weren't keeping up with that, whether it's having a regular user review. Okay, where is that? Where is that report? Can I have access to it? Or, vendor documentation. Okay, we're using an MSSP to do this. They have a shared responsibility matrix. We've written about them in our plan. But something's referenced, it could be a standard operating procedure. It could be some kind of, deliverable. Can I see that? That's what trips organizations up is, oh, I didn't know it was going to go that far. I might not have even known that I mentioned that, and I didn't have that piece of evidence at the ready. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense. So.
That's some juicy stuff there. Go watch, run that back, play it again, take some notes, right? Because that's really what you want to be prepared for, right? So,
yes, yep, absolutely.
That's really good. Thank you for sharing. For the organizations who may be listening, really important. So, what role does systems engineering play then? I mean, you've spoken to this a little bit in this final phase. What role do you play in all of this?
Well, systems engineering is an MSP. We do have the advisory services team, and an organization might be utilizing us for both of those things, managed services and consulting, or they may just be utilizing systems engineering for managed services only. We all know that be prepared and make sure your MSP is prepared to participate in the assessment. So come assessment day, members of our organization will absolutely be involved on interviews and demonstrations and for answering questions. That is a fact, and that is what we do with clients. And then from the consulting standpoint, that may vary. We could be there side by side with the client through it all, or we may be sort of coaching them, giving them tips along the way, doing debriefings, and they may go alone. Come assessment day, they're ready and they're going to do it that way. So there is flexibility. It depends on the organization, but as I've mentioned, being prepared, understanding what's being asked, and having the right people in the room is key. C3PAOs prepare organizations for this. So when you engage for your full assessment, you're going to know what the schedule is. You're going to know what's being asked and who needs to be in the room.
Okay.
So,
Yep.
As I've said before, just having those third parties that you have strong relationships with, that is so important. I like working at systems engineering because we really take care of that relationship and that partnership to make sure our clients know we're there for you, we're there with you. Please keep us in the loop. Let's get ready for this. Let's make sure we're resourced for this and you have everything you need.
Sure.
If I were the OSA, that's what I want to know, for assessment day, that I've got all the people I need.
I think we've heard this already, but I'll ask if we can get sort of like a hot take, right? If we can kind of hone in on your top advice for an organization company heading into their first formal assessment. What's the thing I need to know? What's your advice for me?
Well, I'll say it again. My top advice is prior to that day, consider and plan for doing a mock assessment beforehand. If that's available to you, if it's in your budget and you can do it, absolutely go through a mock assessment to understand where you stand before the real assessment and get some practice in. If you can't, or you choose not to do that, then I would go back to the basics of the roles and responsibilities. Look through the requests, the evidence, the guidance from your C3PAO about what's happening on what days. Make sure you have the right resources to answer questions. Make sure your evidence that you've gathered is readily available and you can grab it and speak to it and find it. It's not uncommon, a similar process you'd go through in other audits, really.
Right. Yeah.
But I do a lot of tabletop exercises where we work with customers to go through a mock incident. I mean, you don't want to be figuring things out during the real event or incident.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want clients to be figuring this out during their actual assessment, fumbling for evidence, not knowing who's saying what. So having a way to prepare before that in a mock scenario or, even ad hoc on your own, just doing what you can there is so important.
Okay. Any other final thoughts come to mind before we wrap this one up?
I think that if you're approaching the full assessment part of the journey, then it's a major milestone. It's very exciting. We are excited to see organizations going through their full assessments, having success, and it's just a moment to recognize a lot of hard work that has gone into this process. So, I think it's just something to be proud about. And while it is a nerve-wracking experience, perhaps, also not to forget to, congratulate yourselves and pat yourselves on the back.
That's great. Great takeaway. All right, Laura, thank you so much. Appreciated.
Thank you, Mike.
Absolutely. All right. Well, there's some really good stuff in there. Practice, prepare, mock assessment, have a great team around you. All really, really great pieces of advice today. Please make sure to go back and watch some of our other episodes as well. There's much more to come. Don't forget, we've got a CMMC resource page at systemsengineering.com, and we have more episodes coming your way soon from voices of the front lines of CMMC compliance. Thanks.